The morning sun slanted through the grimy windows of Rosie's diner, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. I wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day, my fingers raw from the harsh cleaning solution. The smell of burnt coffee and greasy bacon hung in the air, as familiar to me as my own reflection. "Order up, Maya." Jerry, the cook, slid 2 plates of scrambled eggs across the pass-through window, his face glistening with sweat despite the early hour. I forced a smile, tucking a strand of dark hair behind my ear. "Thanks, Jerry." My back ached as I balanced, the plates on my arm, navigating between the crowded tables. 6 hours into my double shift, and I still had another 6 to go, but I couldn't complain, not when every dollar counted. The rent was due next week, and my community college tuition payment the week after that. At 24, I was still chasing the nursing degree I'd been working toward for the past 5 years, one exhausting shift at a time. "Can I get you folks anything else?" I asked, setting the plates in front of a couple of truckers who barely looked up from their phones. "More coffee?" one grunted. Not bothering with a please or thank you, I nodded and moved on, refilling cups, taking orders, clearing tables. The familiar rhythm of the diner, a dance I'd perfected over 4 years of employment. Some days, it felt like I'd always be here, trapped in this cycle of barely making ends meet, watching life happen to other people through the streaky windows. The lunch rush was just beginning when my manager, Rita, appeared beside me at the register. Her thin face was pinched with annoyance. "Maya, I need you to take the outside tables today. Jen called in sick again." She said this like it was my fault, her lips pursed in disapproval. I bit back a sigh. The outside tables meant running back and forth across the parking lot to the picnic area where truckers and travelers liked to stop for a quick bite. It was exhausting work, especially on a hot day like today, but arguing with Rita never ended. "Well, sure, no problem," I said, untying and retying my apron. "And try to smile more," she added, scrutinizing my face. "Customers don't tip gloomy waitresses." I forced my lips upward as she walked away, the fake smile dropping the moment she disappeared into the back office. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed a notepad and headed outside. The heat hit me like a wall as I pushed through the glass door. Summer in Arizona was unforgiving, the asphalt radiating heat in visible waves. I squinted against the brightness, already feeling sweat beading at my temples. 3 tables were occupied outside, and I made my way to the first one, taking orders for burgers and iced tea. The traffic on the main road was heavy, unusual for a Tuesday. I could hear the impatient honking of cars as I balanced a tray of drinks, carefully stepping over the cracked pavement. That's when I noticed the boy. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, standing at the edge of the diner's parking lot, bouncing a small red ball. His sandy brown hair fell across his eyes as he concentrated, completely absorbed in his game. He was well dressed in what looked like private school clothes, khaki shorts, and a crisp blue polo shirt that stood out against the dusty surroundings. Something about him seemed off. Why was a child his age alone in a diner parking lot? I scanned the area looking for a parent or guardian, but saw no one paying him any attention. The boy moved closer to the parking lot exit, still focused on his ball, oblivious to the traffic just feet away. I delivered the drinks to my table, my eyes darting back to the boy every few seconds. A dark SUV pulled into the lot, tires crunching. On gravel, music blaring through open windows. The driver was texting, head down, one hand casually draped over the steering wheel. My stomach clenched as I realized his trajectory would take him right past where the boy was playing. Then everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The red ball bounced away from the boy, rolling toward the path of the oncoming SUV. Without hesitation, the child darted after it, directly into the vehicle's path. I didn't think. I moved. The tray clattered to the ground behind me as I sprinted across the lot, my worn sneakers slapping against the hot asphalt. I heard someone shout, maybe it was me. The SUV's brakes squealed as the driver finally looked up, but it was too late to stop completely. I reached the boy just as the vehicle bore down on us. My arms wrapped around his small body, lifting him off his feet as I twisted away from the approaching bumper. The momentum sent us both tumbling to the ground several feet away. Pain shot through my elbow and hip as we hit the pavement hard. The boy clutched tightly against my chest. The SUV skidded to a stop inches from where we had been standing. My heart hammered against my ribs, blood roaring in my ears. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the solid weight of the child in my arms, alive and whole. "Are you okay?" I gasped, loosening my grip enough to look down at him. His eyes were wide with shock, tears welling up, but he appeared uninjured. He nodded shakily, his bottom lip trembling. I dropped my ball. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "That's okay, balls can be replaced, you can't." The driver jumped out of the SUV, phone still in hand, face pale with shock. Oh my God, I didn't see. I was just, "Is he hurt?" Before I could answer, a sleek black car screeched to a halt at the edge of the parking lot. The door flew open, and a man erupted from the driver's seat, moving with such urgent purpose that everyone in the vicinity seemed to freeze. "Ethan!" His voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Ethan!" The boy in my arms twisted toward the sound. "Dad!" The man who rushed toward us was tall and imposing, dressed in an expensive suit that seemed impervious to the heat. His face was all sharp angles and barely contained panic, dark eyes scanning his son for injuries. He dropped to his knees beside us, heedless of the dust and gravel that must have been ruining his tailored pants. "Are you hurt? What happened?" His hands moved over the boy, checking for injuries with gentle efficiency. "I'm okay, Dad. She saved me." The boy, Ethan, pointed at me, and suddenly those intense eyes were on my face. Time seemed to stop as our gazes locked. His eyes were the same warm brown as his son's, but with flecks of gold that caught the sunlight. For a moment, I forgot about the pain in my elbow, the heat, the gathered crowd of onlookers. Something electric passed between us, an unspoken recognition that felt strangely like déjà vu. Then the moment broke as Rita's voice cut through the air. "Maya, what on earth is going on out here?" Reality crashed back. I was still sitting on the filthy pavement, my uniform stained and torn at the knee, surrounded by a growing crowd of curious diners and travelers, and I was still on the clock, with a double shift to finish and tables to serve. The man, Ethan's father, seemed to come back to himself as well. He helped his son to his feet, then unexpectedly extended his hand to me. After a moment's hesitation, I took it, allowing him to pull me upright. His grip was warm and solid, steadying me as I winced at the pain in my hip. "You saved my son's life," he said quietly, his voice rich and deep. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, weighted with something I couldn't quite define. Shook my head, suddenly embarrassed by the attention. Anyone would have done the same. His expression told me he didn't believe that for a second. "What's your name?" "Maya," I answered, suddenly conscious of my disheveled appearance, the coffee stains on my apron, the tear in my black work pants. "Maya Diaz." "Maya," he repeated, as if testing how the name felt on his tongue. "I'm Daniel Evans, and I owe you a debt I can never repay." Behind me, I could hear Rita calling my name again, her voice sharp with irritation. The lunch rush was in full swing, and here I was, standing in the parking lot with a complete stranger. A very handsome, very well-dressed stranger whose son I'd just saved from being hit by a car. "I have to get back to work," I said reluctantly, already stepping away. Something flickered in Daniel Evans' eyes, surprise perhaps, or disappointment. He nodded once, watching as I turned back toward the diner. I could feel his gaze on my back as I walked away, my heart still racing from the near accident, my mind replaying the moment our eyes had met. Little did I know that this chance encounter would change the course of my life forever. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. My hands trembled as I poured coffee, took orders, and delivered plates of greasy food. The adrenaline that had surged through me during those terrifying moments in the parking lot had left me jittery and distracted. Every time the bell above the door jingled, I found myself glancing up, half expecting to see Daniel Evans walk back in, but he didn't return. "You should have gotten his number," Tina said during our brief overlap in shifts. She leaned against the counter watching me count out my meager tips. He was gorgeous, and that car definitely loaded. I rolled my eyes, ignoring the flutter in my stomach at the memory of those intense eyes. "I saved his kid, Tina. I wasn't trying to get a date." "Still," she persisted, twirling a strand of bleached blonde hair around her finger. "It would have made a great story. Poor waitress rescues rich guy's kid, they fall in love happily ever after." "This isn't one of your romance novels," I muttered, tucking the bills into my wallet. $47 for a 12-hour shift. Not even enough to cover the electricity bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. Rita appeared from the back office, her perpetual frown deepening when she saw me still at the register. "Maya, before you go, I need to talk to you about what happened today." My stomach sank. I should have known this was coming. Despite saving a child from being hit by a car, I'd abandoned my tables for nearly 20 minutes in the aftermath. 3 customers had complained about the wait, and 1 table had left without paying. "In my office," Rita added, turning away. Without waiting for a response, Tina gave me a sympathetic look as I followed our manager, the weight of exhaustion settling deeper into my bones. I didn't regret what I'd done. I'd do it again in a heartbeat, but I couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with rent due and tuition payments looming. Rita's office was barely larger than a closet, crammed with filing cabinets and stacks of invoices. A small desk fan whirred ineffectively against the heat. She gestured for me to sit in the rickety chair across from her desk. "Maya, you know I value your work ethic," she began, folding her hands on the desk. It was the same way she started every conversation before she delivered bad news. But today's incident caused significant disruption to our service. "Rita, a child almost got hit by a car," I said, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. "What was I supposed to do?" She sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose beneath her glasses. "I understand the circumstances were unusual, but we lost nearly $200 in business because of the commotion. Tables left without paying. Food got cold," customers complained. "So what are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I'm saying I need reliable staff who can focus on their job," she replied, her tone softening slightly. "I'm going to have to cut your hours next week, just until things settle down." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Cut hours meant cut pay, and I was already stretching every dollar to the breaking point. "Rita, please, I can't afford—" "It's not personal, Maya, it's business." She slid a revised schedule across the desk. 4 shifts instead of 6. It's the best I can do right now." I stared at the paper, doing quick mental calculations. The reduction would cost me nearly $150 next week. Money I desperately needed for rent, for tuition, for the medications my grandmother needed, but Medicare didn't fully cover. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked, hating the note of pleading in my voice. "Extra cleaning shifts? Inventory?" Rita shook her head. "Not right now. Maybe in a few weeks if things pick up." She glanced at her watch, a clear dismissal. "Get some rest. You look exhausted." I left the diner in a daze, the revised schedule clutched in my hand. The afternoon heat enveloped me as I walked toward the bus stop, my thoughts racing. I could try to pick up shifts at the convenience store where I occasionally worked weekends, but Sam had already told me business was slow. Maybe the hospital was hiring janitorial staff again. The hours were brutal, but they paid better than the diner. So preoccupied was I with these worries that I almost didn't notice the sleek black car parked by the bus stop. The same car from earlier. The driver's door opened as I approached, and Daniel Evans stepped out, looking even more imposing in the fading afternoon light. "Maya," he said, as if we were continuing a conversation that had barely been interrupted. "I hoped I'd catch you before you left." I stopped short, suddenly aware of my disheveled appearance after a grueling double shift. "Mr. Evans, is Ethan okay?" A smile softened his features, transforming his face from merely handsome to breathtaking. "He's fine, thanks to you. Just a few scrapes and a new understanding about looking both ways." He hesitated, running a hand through his dark hair. "I wanted to thank you properly. Your manager wouldn't tell me when your shift ended, but I figured I'd wait and see. You've been waiting out here?" I glanced at my watch. It was nearly 7 o'clock. "For how long?" "A couple of hours," he admitted, seeming almost embarrassed. "I had some calls to make anyway." He gestured to the car. "Can I give you a ride home? It's the least I can do." Every warning bell in my head went off simultaneously. Getting into a car with a stranger, no matter how well-dressed or polite, was exactly the kind of thing my grandmother had warned me against since childhood. But something about Daniel Evans made me hesitate. The genuine concern in his eyes, perhaps, or the way he stood a respectful distance away, making no move to crowd my space. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but the bus is fine. I take it every day." He nodded, accepting my refusal without argument. "Of course, I understand." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Then at least let me give you this. A small token of my gratitude." I didn't take it. "That's really not necessary, Mr. Evans." "Daniel, please," he corrected, "and I insist. You saved my son's life today, Maya. Nothing I could give you would ever be enough to repay that debt." The envelope remained suspended between us, growing heavier with implication by the second. I'd been raised to believe that accepting money from strangers was just a step above begging, a surrender of dignity my proud immigrant grandmother would never condone. But the reality of my situation pressed against that pride like a physical weight. Cut hours, overdue bills, tuition payments. Still, I shook my head. "I can't take your money. I didn't help Ethan for a reward." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or a new kind of respect. "No," he said slowly, "I don't imagine you did." He slipped the envelope back into his pocket. "Then how about dinner instead? You and your family. A proper thank you." The idea was so unexpected that I almost laughed. "Dinner? Tomorrow night," he suggested, "at La Maison. Do you know it?" Of course I knew it. Everyone in Phoenix knew La Maison, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, where reservations were booked months in advance and entrees cost more than I made in a day. It was the kind of place people like me drove past but never entered. "I don't think I began." "Please," he interrupted, his voice softening. "Ethan wants to thank you too, and I'd like the chance to get to know the woman who saved my son." There was something in the way he said it, a hint of vulnerability beneath the confident exterior, that made my carefully constructed refusal waver. Or maybe it was just exhaustion or hunger or the crushing weight of financial worry making me susceptible to his offer. "Just dinner?" I clarified. He nodded, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Just dinner. I promised to behave like a perfect gentleman." The bus rumbled around the corner, belching exhaust as it approached the stop. "Decision time." "Okay," I heard myself say. "Dinner tomorrow." The smile that broke across his face made him look younger, almost boyish. "Excellent. Shall I pick you up?" The bus doors opened with a hiss. I hesitated, still cautious, despite my acceptance. "I'll meet you there. 7 o'clock?" "7 it is." He pulled out a business card, offering it to me. "My number in case anything." "It comes up." I took the card, our fingers brushing momentarily. Even that slight contact sent an inexplicable warmth up my arm. The bus driver honked impatiently. "I have to go," I said, backing toward the waiting bus. Daniel nodded, watching as I climbed aboard. Through the grimy window, I saw him still standing there as the bus pulled away, a solitary figure in an expensive suit, staring after a city bus like it contained something valuable. I glanced down at the business card in my hand. Daniel Evans, CEO, Evans Enterprises. My heart stuttered. Evans Enterprises, the technology conglomerate that dominated the Phoenix skyline with its gleaming headquarters. The company that appeared on the local news at least once a week, announcing new innovations or expansions. The man whose son I'd saved wasn't just wealthy, he was a millionaire, possibly a billionaire, and I was having dinner with him tomorrow night. The reality of what I'd agreed to washed over me in a wave of panic. My one nice dress was 2 years old and slightly too tight across the shoulders. My only pair of heels had a scuff on the left toe that no amount of shoe polish could hide. And la maison. God, what had I been thinking? I didn't belong in a place like that, with white tablecloths and sommeliers and food I couldn't pronounce. The bus lurched to a stop, snapping me out of my spiral of anxiety. This was just dinner, a thank you for saving his son, nothing more. I'd go, be polite, enjoy a nice meal, and that would be the end of it. Our worlds were too different for anything else. As the bus continued its journey through the gathering, darkness, I had no way of knowing how wrong I was. That dinner would be just the beginning, and my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. My apartment building stood in stark contrast to the glossy business card in my hand. The 3-story complex had once been painted a cheerful yellow, but years of desert sun had faded it to a sickly beige. The security gate perpetually stuck halfway open, and the pool had been empty for as long as I'd lived there. But the rent was manageable, barely, and it was close to both the diner and my community college. "Abuela, I'm home," I called, unlocking the door to the apartment I shared with my grandmother. The smell of simmering beans and chili powder greeted me, along with the gentle hum of a telenovela playing on our ancient television. My grandmother sat in her worn armchair, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in its usual neat bun, her gnarled fingers working deftly with a crochet hook. "Mija," she smiled, pausing her work. "You're late today." I bent to kiss her papery cheek, the familiar scent of her rosewater perfume washing over me. "Long day," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Something smells good." "Frijoles charros," she replied, her accent wrapping around the words like a comfortable blanket. "Your favorite. You look tired, Niña." "I'm fine, Abuela." I headed to our tiny kitchen to wash my hands, debating whether to tell her about the events of the day. Maria Diaz was a worrier by nature, and at 73, her heart had already endured more than its share of stress. But she also had an uncanny ability to sense when I was hiding something. She proved this once again by appearing in the kitchen doorway, her dark eyes narrowed in suspicion. "What happened? And don't tell me nothing." "I know that face." I sighed, drying my hands on a threadbare dish towel. "There was an accident at work." "Well, almost an accident." Her expression sharpened. "Are you hurt?" No, I'm fine." I leaned against the counter, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day's events. "A little boy almost got hit by a car in the parking lot." I pulled him out of the way. "Dios mío," she whispered, making the sign of the cross. "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't," I assured her quickly. "The boy is fine too, just scared." She studied my face, reading the things I wasn't saying. "There's more. Tell me." I hesitated, then pulled out Daniel Evans' business card, holding it like evidence of something I wasn't sure I'd done. "The boy's father wants to thank me. He invited me to dinner tomorrow night." Abuela took the card, squinting at it through her reading glasses. Her eyebrows rose almost to her hairline. "Evans Enterprises? The big building downtown?" She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of concern and something like awe. This man is very important, Maya. I know. I moved to the stove, lifting the lid on the pot of beans to avoid her penetrating gaze. It's just dinner, Abuela, a thank you, nothing more. She made a small noise that could have meant anything from skepticism to approval. And you are going? I nodded, still not looking at her. At la maison. La maison. This time there was no mistaking her tone. Pure, undiluted disbelief. Mija, you can't go there in your work clothes? I turned to face her finally, a smile tugging at my lips despite my anxiety. I wasn't planning to. I thought I'd wear my blue dress, the one from Carmen's wedding. My grandmother shook her head firmly. No, that dress is too small for you. Now, and too casual for such a place. She tapped the business card thoughtfully. We need something better. Abuela, we can't afford. Gabriela's daughter works at that nice department store, she interrupted, her mind clearly already made. Up, the one with the good sales. She will help us find something proper, something that makes you look like the beautiful, educated young woman you are. I sighed, knowing it was pointless to argue once my grandmother set her mind on something. We're on a budget, Abuela, a strict one, she waved dismissively. I have my emergency money. This is not an emergency. A dinner at La Maison with a millionaire who might offer you a better job than that diner? She raised an eyebrow. Sounds like an opportunity to me, Mija. And we don't waste opportunities in this family. I wanted to protest further, but the determination in her eyes stopped me. For nearly 6 years, since my parents' death in a car accident, my grandmother had sacrificed everything to help me stay in school. Her social security checks went straight to our rent, while her modest savings had been gradually depleted to cover what my scholarships didn't. She'd never once complained, never made me feel like a burden, even when I knew I was. Okay, I conceded, but nothing extravagant, promise me. She smiled, satisfied. I promise. Now sit, eat. You need your strength. As we ate dinner, I filled her in on more details of the day, carefully omitting the part about my reduced hours. There would be time enough to worry about that tomorrow. Tonight, I needed to process the strange twist my life had taken in the span of a few chaotic moments. Later, after Abuela had gone to bed, I sat at our small kitchen table, Daniel Evans' business card propped against the salt shaker. CEO Evans. Enterprises. I pulled out my ancient laptop and typed his name into the search bar. She proved this once again by appearing in the kitchen doorway. Her dark eyes narrowed in suspicion. What happened? And don't tell me nothing. I know that face. I sighed, drying my hands on a threadbare dish towel. There was an accident at work. Well, almost an accident. Her expression sharpened. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine. I leaned against the counter, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day's events. A little boy almost got hit by a car in the parking lot. I pulled him out of the way. Dios mio, she whispered, making the sign of the cross. You could have been killed, but I wasn't, I assured her quickly. The boy is fine too, just scared. She studied my face, reading the things I wasn't saying. There's more. Tell me. I hesitated, then pulled out Daniel Evans' business card, holding it like evidence of something I wasn't sure I'd done. The boy's father wants to thank me. He invited me to dinner tomorrow night. Abuela took the card, squinting at it through her reading glasses. Her eyebrows rose almost to her hairline. Evans Enterprises? The big building downtown? She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of concern and something like awe. This man is very important, Maya. I know. I moved to the stove, lifting the lid on the pot of beans to avoid her penetrating gaze. It's just dinner, Abuela, a thank you, nothing more. She made a small noise that could have meant anything from skepticism to approval. And you are going? I nodded, still not looking at her. At La Maison. La Maison. This time there was no mistaking her tone, pure, undiluted disbelief. "Mija, you can't go there in your work clothes?" I turned to face her finally, a smile tugging at my lips despite my anxiety. I wasn't planning to. I thought I'd wear my blue dress, the one from Carmen's wedding. My grandmother shook her head firmly. "No, no, that dress is too small for you now, and too casual for such a place." She tapped the business card thoughtfully. "We need something better." "Abuela, we can't afford—" "Gabriela's daughter works at that nice department store," she interrupted, her mind clearly already made. "Up. The one with the good sales. She will help us find something proper, something that makes you look like the beautiful, educated young woman you are." I sighed, knowing it was pointless to argue once my grandmother set her mind on something. "We're on a budget, Abuela, a strict one," she waved dismissively. "I have my emergency money. This is not an emergency. A dinner at La Maison with a millionaire who might offer you a better job than that diner." She raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like an opportunity to me, Mia. And we don't waste opportunities in this family." I wanted to protest further, but the determination in her eyes stopped me. For nearly 6 years, since my parents' death in a car accident, my grandmother had sacrificed everything to help me stay in school. Her social security checks went straight to our rent, while her modest savings had been gradually depleted to cover what my scholarships didn't. She'd never once complained, never made me feel like a burden, even when I knew I was. "Okay," I conceded, "but nothing extravagant. Promise me." She smiled, satisfied. "I promise. Now sit, eat. You need your strength." As we ate dinner, I filled her in on more details of the day, carefully omitting the part about my reduced hours. There would be time enough to worry about that tomorrow. Tonight, I needed to process the strange twist my life had taken in the span of a few chaotic moments. Later, after Abuela had gone to bed, I sat at our small kitchen table, Daniel Evans' business card propped against the salt shaker. CEO, Evans, Enterprises. I pulled out my ancient laptop and typed his name into the search bar. Inside lay a pair of simple pearl earrings. I'd seen them in old photos, but had assumed they were lost or sold years ago during one of our financial crises. "Abuela," I whispered, touching them gently. "She would want you to have them now," my grandmother said firmly. "For good luck." I put them on carefully, the cool weight of them against my neck, a physical connection to the mother I'd lost too soon. In the mirror, a stranger looked back at me. A poised young woman in an elegant dress, not a tired waitress in a stained uniform. "Remember who you are, Maya," Abuela said, straightening my necklace with practiced hands. "The daughter of Rafael and Isabella Diaz, a woman with dignity and intelligence. You belong anywhere you choose to go." I hugged her tightly, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in me. "Thank you, Abuela." She patted my back. "Now go, and call me if you need anything." The Uber ride to La Maison took 20 minutes, each passing mile increasing my anxiety. The restaurant was located in the most exclusive area of Phoenix, nestled among high-end boutiques and 5-star hotels. As we pulled up to the entrance, I took a deep breath, trying to channel my grandmother's confidence. "You got this," I whispered to myself, stepping out of the car and into a world I'd only seen from the outside until now. La Maison stood like a gleaming temple to luxury, its limestone facade illuminated by subtle lighting that made it glow against the darkening sky. A red carpet extended from the entrance to the street, and a valet in a crisp uniform stepped forward to greet arriving guests. I hesitated at the edge of the carpet, suddenly feeling like an imposter in my clearance rack dress. "Welcome to La Maison, miss," the valet said, his tone professional but his eyes quickly assessing my lack of a vehicle. "Do you have a reservation?" "I'm meeting someone," I replied, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. Daniel Evans and his son. The change in the valet's demeanor was immediate. His posture straightened, and a new respect entered his voice. "Of course. Mr. Evans mentioned you would be joining him. Please, right this way." He gestured toward the entrance, where a hostess in a black cocktail dress waited with a practiced smile. "Ms. Diaz for the Evans table," the valet announced, handing me off like a package that required special handling. The hostess nodded graciously. "Mr. Evans and his son are already seated. Please follow me." The interior of La Maison was even more impressive than its exterior. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in pristine white linens. The gentle notes of a piano floated through the air, complementing the soft murmur of conversation and the delicate clink of fine china. The patrons were obviously wealthy. Women draped in designer dresses and subtle diamonds, men in tailored suits that probably cost more than my semester's tuition. I followed the hostess through the dining room, acutely aware of curious glances from other diners. Did I look as out of place as I felt? Was my dress too casual, my jewelry too simple, my walk too uncertain? I fought the urge to turn around and flee back to the familiar world of Rosie's diner. Then I saw them, and everything else faded into the background. Daniel and Ethan Evans sat at a corner table partially secluded by an elegant partition of frosted glass. Daniel rose as we approached, and I was struck again by his imposing height and the quiet authority he radiated, even in this setting of wealth and power. But it was the genuine warmth in his smile that caught me off guard, making my heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with nervousness. "Maya," he said, my name sounding different in his rich voice. "You made it." "Maya!" Ethan bounced up from his seat, his previous shyness apparently forgotten. "Dad, it's the superhero Waitress." A startled laugh escaped me. "I think your memory might be a little exaggerated, Ethan." "Nuh," the boy insisted. "You saved me from getting squished like Spider-Man." Daniel rested a hand on his son's shoulder. "Ethan, remember what we discussed about indoor voices?" The boy ducked his head, but his enthusiasm remained undimmed. "Sorry, Dad." "Please sit," Daniel said, gesturing to the chair across from him as the hostess discreetly withdrew. I sat, smoothing my dress nervously. Up close, I could see the exceptional quality of Daniel's charcoal suit, obviously custom-made to fit his broad shoulders and lean frame. A platinum watch glinted at his wrist, and his navy blue tie was secured with a simple but elegant pin. Everything about him spoke of wealth that was confident enough to be understated. "You look lovely," he said, catching me off guard. "That color suits you." A flush of warmth spread across my cheeks. "Thank you. This place is impressive. It's one of the few restaurants in Phoenix where I can be relatively certain Ethan won't be recognized," he explained, his voice lowered slightly. "Privacy becomes a commodity when your surname appears on buildings." Before I could respond, a waiter appeared at our table, presenting menus bound in soft leather. "Good evening, Mr. Evans, Master Ethan." He nodded to me. "Madam, may I start you with something to drink?" Daniel glanced at me. "Wine. They have an excellent selection." "Just water for now, thank you," I replied, not wanting to risk any further. Loss of composure. Alcohol and nervousness were not a combination I wanted to explore in this setting. "Sparkling water for the table then," Daniel decided. "And perhaps you could bring the amuse-bouche while we look at the menus." "Certainly, sir." The waiter bowed slightly and retreated. I opened the menu and immediately wished I hadn't. There were no prices listed, never a good sign for someone on a budget, and the descriptions were filled with ingredients I'd never heard of. Truffles and foie gras, reductions and infusions, techniques that sounded more like science experiments than cooking. "Dad, can I have the steak?" Ethan asked, his small finger pointing to an item on the children's menu that had been presented to him. "Of course," Daniel replied, "but remember to try your vegetables too." I hid behind my menu, frantically trying to find something I could pronounce with confidence when the time came to order. My panic must have shown on my face because Daniel leaned forward slightly. "The chef's tasting menu is excellent," he suggested gently, "if you're comfortable with letting him choose the courses." Relief washed over me. That sounds perfect. The waiter returned with our water and a tray of tiny, exquisite appetizers. The amuse-bouche, I realized. Each was a perfect bite-sized creation, almost too beautiful to eat. "This one's my favorite," Ethan confided, pointing to what looked like a miniature pastry topped with a curl of something pink. "It's goat cheese with beet thingies." "Beet reduction," Daniel corrected with an indulgent smile. I carefully selected one and took a bite, surprised by the explosion of flavors. Tangy cheese, sweet earthy beets, and something herbaceous I couldn't identify. "It's delicious," I said with genuine appreciation. As we continued through the appetizers, Ethan peppered me with questions about my superhero abilities, his childish enthusiasm breaking the tension I'd been carrying since entering the restaurant. Daniel watched our interaction with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, something between amusement and assessment. "So you're really just a waitress?" Ethan asked eventually, his head tilted in curiosity. "Not a secret superhero?" "Ethan," Daniel admonished gently. "That's not polite." "It's okay," I assured him, smiling at the boy. "I'm a waitress now, but I'm also a student. I'm studying to become a nurse." "A nurse?" Ethan's eyes widened. "That's like a superhero too. My mom had lots of nurses when she was sick. They were nice." An uncomfortable silence fell at the mention of his mother. Daniel's expression tightened almost imperceptibly before he smoothed it away. "Yes, they were," he agreed quietly. Then, with a deliberate shift in tone, "Maya, tell us more about your nursing program. Which school do you attend?" Grateful for the redirection, I explained about my studies at the community college, my plans to transfer to the university's nursing program, and my goal of eventually becoming a nurse practitioner specializing in pediatric care. As I spoke, I was surprised to find Daniel listening with genuine interest, asking informed questions about the healthcare system and educational requirements. "That's an admirable path," he said when I finished. "Healthcare professionals like nurses are the backbone of our medical system, yet they rarely get the recognition or compensation they deserve." His comment startled me. It wasn't the typical platitude people offered when they learned about my career plans, but a thoughtful observation that acknowledged some of the very real challenges in the field I was entering. "Thank you," I said, meeting his gaze directly for perhaps the first time that evening. Most people just say, "That's nice," and change the subject. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I'm not most people." No, he certainly wasn't. Our main courses arrived. A perfectly cooked filet mignon for Ethan, and for Daniel and me, the first of several small plates in the chef's tasting menu. Each dish was a work of art, presented with theatrical flourish, by our waiter, who explained the components and preparation techniques. As we ate, the conversation flowed more naturally. Daniel shared stories about Ethan's school adventures, while I talked about some of the more colorful characters at Rosie's diner. We discovered a shared love of classic films and an equally shared distaste for reality television. He spoke about books he'd recently read, and I found myself admitting that between work and school, my reading had been limited to textbooks and the occasional magazine. "You should read Harry Potter," Ethan interjected earnestly. "Dad's reading them to me at bedtime. We're on the fourth one." "That's a serious commitment," I smiled, enchanted by the image of this powerful businessman reading children's books aloud at bedtime. "We haven't missed a night yet," Daniel said, ruffling his son's hair affectionately. "Even when I have to travel for business, we do it over video call." There was such tenderness in the gesture, such obvious devotion, that something twisted in my chest. Whatever else Daniel Evans might be, CEO, millionaire, eligible bachelor, he was first and foremost a loving father. It was there in every interaction with his son, every careful listening to Ethan's rambling stories, every gentle correction of his manners. By the time dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate confection that made Ethan's eyes grow wide with delight, I had almost forgotten to be intimidated by my surroundings. Almost. "Maya," Daniel said as we finished our desserts, his tone shifting to something more serious. "There's something I'd like to discuss with you." My guard, which had gradually lowered throughout the evening, instantly snapped back into place. "Here it comes," I thought. "The real reason for this dinner. The offer of money, perhaps, or something else that would reset the power dynamic between us." "What is it?" I asked, setting down my dessert fork. He glanced at Ethan, who was happily demolishing his chocolate cake, oblivious to the sudden tension. "You mentioned that you're working at the diner while studying. That must be challenging." I shrugged, uncomfortable with where this might be heading. "It's what a lot of students do. Work and study." "Of course," he acknowledged, "but I imagine the hours aren't particularly compatible with your class schedule or clinical rotations." "I make it work," I said, my tone more defensive than I'd intended. Daniel seemed to sense my withdrawal. He leaned back slightly, his expression carefully neutral. "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I'm simply wondering if you've considered other employment options, ones that might offer more flexibility and better compensation." And there it was. I'd been right after all. This dinner, the polite conversation, the apparent interest in my life, it had all been leading to this moment. An offer of charity dressed up as opportunity. "Mr. Evans," I began, my voice cooling. "Daniel," he corrected gently. "Daniel," I conceded. "I appreciate this dinner and your concern, but I don't need—" "Dad!" Ethan interrupted, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Can I go see the fish?" I followed his gaze to an elaborate aquarium that formed part of the restaurant's central divider. Daniel hesitated, looking between his son and our unfinished conversation. "Please," Ethan wheedled. "I'll be super careful and stay where you can see me." Daniel relented with a small sigh. "All right, but stay in front of the aquarium. Don't wander." As Ethan scampered off, Daniel turned back to me, his expression sincere. "Maya, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job." I stared at Daniel, certain I'd misheard him. "A job?" "Yes." He took a sip of his water, watching me over the rim of his glass. "Evans Enterprises has a healthcare division that partners with several hospitals and medical centers across Arizona. We recently launched a scholarship program for nursing students that includes part-time employment in administrative roles." My mind raced to catch up with this unexpected turn. "And you're offering me one of these positions?" "The program is competitive," he acknowledged, "but given your academic record and work ethic, I believe you'd be an excellent candidate." I frowned, suspicion creeping back in. "How do you know about my academic record?" A flicker of something, embarrassment, crossed his face. "I may have done some research after our encounter yesterday. Your community college dean speaks very highly of you. She mentioned you're consistently on the dean's list despite your work schedule." "You called my dean?" I asked, incredulous. "Isn't that a bit invasive?" Daniel had the grace to look slightly chagrined. "In retrospect, perhaps. I'm accustomed to doing thorough background checks before considering candidates for any position within my company." He paused, studying my expression. "I've overstepped. I apologize." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I wouldn't have expected a man in his position to apologize so readily, without qualifications or excuses. "What exactly would this job entail?" I asked finally, curiosity winning out over indignation. Relief softened his features. "Administrative support for our healthcare initiatives. 20 hours a week, flexible scheduling to accommodate your classes." The pay is competitive, significantly better than food service, and includes partial tuition reimbursement. It sounded too good to be true. I'd applied for similar positions before, only to be told I lacked the necessary experience or connections. "And you're offering this to me because you're qualified," he replied simply. "And because we happen to have an opening in the program right now. The timing is fortunate. I wasn't born yesterday. And the fact that I pulled your son out of the path of a car has nothing to do with it." A hint of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I won't pretend that our meeting wasn't unusual or that I'm not grateful for what you did." His expression grew more serious. "But Evans Enterprises doesn't create positions out of gratitude, Maya. We're a business, not a charity. This is a legitimate opportunity, one that requires real work and commitment. You'd be evaluated on your performance just like any other employee." From the aquarium, Ethan waved enthusiastically, pointing at a particularly colorful fish. Daniel lifted his hand in acknowledgement before turning back to me. "Look," he said, his voice lowering slightly. "I understand your skepticism. In your position, I'd feel the same way. So here's what I propose. Come to our offices tomorrow, meet the program director, tour the facilities, ask questions. No commitments, no pressure. If it doesn't feel right, walk away with no hard feelings." It was a reasonable offer, one that respected my agency and intelligence. Still, I hesitated. "And if I say no right now? Then we finish our coffee. I thank you again for saving my son, and we part ways." He spread his hands in a gesture of openness. "This isn't an ultimatum, Maya. It's an opportunity, one you're free to decline." I studied his face, searching for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. What I saw instead was something unexpected: respect. He was treating me not as a charity case or a waitress who'd done him a favor, but as a professional he genuinely wanted to recruit. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll come for the tour." His smile was immediate and genuine. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant arrange everything." He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "Does 2 o'clock work for you?" I thought about my shortened schedule at the diner. Rita had taken away my Thursday afternoon shift, so I was unexpectedly free. 2 works fine. Perfect. He set his phone down, his attention fully returning to me. "Now tell me more about this nursing specialization you're interested in. Pediatrics, was it?" For the next 30 minutes, we talked about healthcare, childhood, development, and the challenges of the medical system. Daniel listened attentively, asking informed questions that revealed a deeper knowledge of the field than I would have expected from a technology executive. "Evans Enterprises develops medical record systems," he explained when I remarked on this. "We work closely with healthcare providers to create software that improves patient care while reducing administrative burdens on staff." Understanding the day-to-day realities of healthcare workers is essential to that mission. This side of his business hadn't appeared in my brief internet research. I'd assumed Evans Enterprises was purely a technology firm, focused on the kind of abstract innovations that made headlines but rarely impacted ordinary lives. "That's surprisingly practical," I admitted. He laughed, the sound warm and unexpected. "Did you think I spent my days counting money in some ivory tower?" Heat rose to my cheeks. "Not exactly, but something like that," he finished for me, his eyes twinkling with amusement rather than offense. "It's a common misconception. The reality of running a business is far more grounded and interesting. We solve problems, create systems, build things that matter." The passion in his voice was compelling. Whatever else Daniel Evans might be, he clearly believed in the work he did. Our conversation was interrupted by Ethan's return, his eyes heavy with sleepiness, despite his attempts to stifle a yawn. "Tired, buddy?" Daniel asked, checking his watch. "It is getting late." "I'm not tired," Ethan protested even as he rubbed his eyes. But the fish went to sleep. Daniel smiled indulgently. Well, we should probably follow their example. He signaled for the check, which appeared almost instantly. He signed it without glancing at the total, a level of financial confidence I couldn't imagine. Can I see you again? Ethan asked me suddenly, his expression earnest. Even if you don't work for my dad? The question caught me off guard. Well, Ethan, Daniel interjected gently, remember what we discussed about personal questions? The boy's face fell slightly. But I like her, Dad. She's nice. And she likes Harry Potter. I never actually said, I began. Everyone likes Harry Potter, Ethan declared with the absolute certainty only a child can muster. You would too if you read it. Daniel gave me an apologetic look. I'm sorry. He can be rather determined. It's all right, I assured him, touched by the boy's enthusiasm. And for the record, Ethan, I do like Harry Potter. I read the books when I was about your age. His face lit up. Really? Who's your favorite? Mine's Hagrid. Definitely Professor McGonagall, I replied, smiling at his excitement. She's tough but fair. Like my teacher, Ms. Patel. Ethan nodded vigorously. Dad, can Maya come to my soccer game on Saturday? Please. Daniel's expression was a mixture of amusement and embarrassment. Ethan, Maya has her own life and plans. We can't just... Actually, I heard myself say, surprising us both. I'd love to come to your game. If that's okay with your dad, of course. I couldn't quite explain the impulse that had prompted this response. Perhaps it was Ethan's infectious enthusiasm, or the genuine connection I felt with this earnest little boy who'd been through so much already in his young life. Or perhaps it was the flash of pleased surprise on Daniel's face, quickly masked, but unmistakable. Really? Ethan bounced in his seat, excitement displacing his earlier sleepiness. It's at Parkside Field at 10 o'clock. I'm number 7. Then I'll look for number 7, I promised, unable to resist his joy. Daniel studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. You're sure? Saturday mornings can be precious when you're working and studying. The question seemed to carry more weight than a simple confirmation about a children's soccer game. I met his gaze steadily. I'm sure. Something shifted in his eyes, a warmth, a recognition perhaps. He nodded once, a gesture that felt like more than mere acknowledgement. As we prepared to leave, Daniel insisted on having his driver take me home, despite my protests that I could call another Uber. It's late, he said firmly, and Phoenix isn't known for its safe public transportation after dark. The sleek town car that pulled up outside the restaurant was yet another reminder of the vast differences in our circumstances. The interior was all buttery leather and subtle lighting, the divider between driver and passengers offering privacy and discretion. Ethan fell asleep almost immediately, his head resting against his father's arm. Daniel gently adjusted the boy's position, his movements practiced and tender. He's exhausted, he murmured. The excitement of the day caught up with him. He's a wonderful child, I said softly, watching the gentle rise and fall of Ethan's chest. You've done an amazing job with him, especially considering... I trailed off, uncertain how to reference his wife's death tactfully, especially as a single parent. Daniel finished for me, his voice quiet but not pained. Thank you. It hasn't been easy, but he makes it worthwhile. He glanced down at his sleeping son, a world of love in that simple look. After Caroline died, there were days when he was the only reason I got out of bed in the morning. The raw honesty of the admission created a sudden intimacy in the darkened car. This wasn't the polished CEO speaking now, but a grieving husband, a devoted father. I lost my parents in a car accident 6 years ago, I offered, feeling compelled to meet his vulnerability with my own. My grandmother raised me after that. I understand what it's like to rebuild your life around an absence. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine in the dim light. I'm sorry for your loss. It never really gets easier, does it? Just different. Different, I agreed. The pain changes shape, becomes part of who you are rather than something that might destroy you. We fell silent then, the quiet understanding between us more meaningful than further words. The car glided through the nighttime streets of Phoenix, past glittering high-rises and into the more modest neighborhoods of the city's outskirts. I should have felt awkward, sitting in this luxury vehicle with a man whose wealth and status were so far removed from my own reality. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace, as if the events of the past 2 days, however unlikely, were somehow right. When we reached my apartment building, Daniel gently shifted Ethan so he could exit the car with me. "You don't have to..." I began. "I'd like to walk you to your door," he said simply. "If that's all right." I nodded, suddenly acutely aware of how my building must look through his eyes. The broken security gate, the flickering exterior lights, the general air of neglect that no amount of tenant effort could disguise. But if Daniel noticed these things, he gave no sign. He walked beside me in comfortable silence, his presence solid and reassuring in the dimly lit courtyard. At my door, I turned to face him. "Thank you for dinner and for the job opportunity. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Maya, I want to be clear about something. The job offer stands regardless of anything else that might develop between us." The statement hung in the air, freighted with meaning. Anything else that might develop between us. So he had felt it too, that inexplicable connection, the sense of recognition that transcended our different worlds. "I'm not looking for complications in my life right now," I said carefully. "Neither am I," he replied, his voice equally measured. And yet, here we are. Here we were indeed, a poor waitress and a millionaire CEO standing outside a rundown apartment in the middle of the night, drawn together by a twist of fate and something more elusive. "Good night, Daniel," I said softly. He took a step back, respecting the boundary I'd implicitly set. "Good night, Maya. I'll see you tomorrow." As I watched him walk back to the waiting car, I was struck by the surreal quality of the moment. 24 hours ago, I'd been just another struggling student, working double shifts and worrying about reduced hours. Now I stood on the threshold of something entirely new and unexpected. What had my grandmother said? "We don't waste opportunities in this family." With a deep breath, I turned and unlocked my door, stepping inside to find Abuela waiting up for me despite the late hour, her eyes bright with curiosity and hope. The Evans Enterprise's headquarters dominated the downtown skyline, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that seemed to reach for the clouds. Standing at its base the following afternoon, I felt like an ant contemplating a redwood. People streamed past me through the revolving doors, all of them moving with purpose, dressed in the uniform of corporate success, tailored suits, polished shoes, confident expressions. I smoothed the front of my best blouse, a simple cream-colored button-down paired with the only professional-looking pants I owned, and took a steadying breath. My grandmother had ironed my outfit twice that morning, her hands moving with practiced precision across the fabric. "Remember," she'd said as I headed for the door, "you have as much right to be there as anyone." With her words echoing in my mind, I pushed through the revolving door and entered the soaring lobby. The interior was impressive without being ostentatious. Warm, wood accents softening the modern lines, a massive living wall of tropical plants bringing life to the space. At the center stood a circular reception desk staffed by 3 professionals who somehow managed to look both approachable and intimidating. "I'm here for an appointment at 2 o'clock, I said to the nearest receptionist, a woman with an immaculate silver bob. "Maya Diaz. I'm supposed to meet with someone about the nursing scholarship program." Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Ms. Diaz, yes. We've been expecting you. She handed me a visitor's badge with my name already printed on it. "Amanda will escort you to the healthcare division." A young woman materialized at my side, her smile professional but genuine. "This way, Miss Diaz." As we walked toward the elevators, I couldn't help but notice the building's design, the thoughtful integration of natural elements, the subtle lighting that mimicked sunlight, the acoustic engineering that somehow muted the sounds of hundreds of people working without making the space feel sterile. The healthcare division occupies floors 12 through 15, Amanda explained as we stepped into an elevator with walls of burnished bronze. "You'll be meeting with Dr. Patel, who oversees our scholarship program." I nodded, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. The elevator moved with silent efficiency, opening onto a floor that looked more like a university research center than a corporate office. The walls were lined with screens displaying medical information, anatomical models, and what appeared to be real-time data from various hospitals. Amanda led me through a series of open workspaces where people collaborated around curved desks or worked quietly in glass-enclosed pods. No one looked harried or stressed, a stark contrast to the perpetual chaos of the diner. "Dr. Patel is just through here," Amanda said, stopping outside a conference room with glass walls. Inside, a middle-aged woman in a saffron-colored suit was reviewing something on a tablet. She looked up as we entered, setting aside her device and rising to greet me with a warm smile and extended hand. "Ms. Diaz, welcome. I'm Amara Patel, Director of Healthcare Initiatives." "Thank you for meeting with me, Dr. Patel," I said, shaking her hand firmly. "Please, call me Amara." She gestured to a chair. "Would you like coffee, tea, water?" "Water. Would be great, thank you." Amanda disappeared to fulfill this request, while Dr. Patel, Amara, settled into a chair across from me. "So I understand you're studying nursing at Phoenix Community College with plans to specialize in pediatrics." "Yes, that's right." I was surprised she already knew this specific detail. "I'm in my second year of the program." "Excellent. And maintaining a 3.9 GPA while working full-time, I believe." She smiled at my startled expression. "Daniel shared your academic records, with your dean's permission, of course." The casual use of Daniel's first name reminded me that this woman likely knew him well, perhaps even socially. The thought made me even more conscious of the power imbalance in the room. "About that," I began carefully. "I want to be clear that I'm interested in this position because of the opportunity it represents, not because of any personal connection to Mr. Evans." Amara's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained pleasantly neutral. "Of course. Daniel mentioned you might have concerns about that." She leaned forward, her manner becoming more direct. "Ms. Diaz, Maya, let me be transparent with you. Daniel did bring your name to my attention, yes, but our scholarship program has very specific requirements, and we don't make exceptions, not even for Daniel Evans." Water arrived, giving me a moment to process this information. "The truth is," Amara continued after Amanda had left again, "we've been struggling to find candidates who meet all our criteria. Strong academic performance, demonstrated financial need, clear commitment to underserved specialties, particularly pediatrics, and the ability to balance work and study effectively." She smiled. "Your record suggests you excel in all these areas." "I'm still learning," I said, not wanting to appear overconfident. "Balancing everything isn't always easy." "That's precisely what makes you an ideal candidate. You understand the challenges our scholarship recipients face because you're living them." Amara opened a folder that had been sitting on the table. "Now, let me tell you about the position and what we offer." For the next 30 minutes, she outlined a program more comprehensive than anything I'd imagined. 20 hours of flexible work per week in healthcare administration, with training provided. full tuition coverage for the remainder of my community college program, and guaranteed scholarship support if I transferred to the university's BSN program, a stipend for books and supplies, access to mentorship from nursing professionals, and the salary, significantly more than I made at the diner, even without considering the tuition benefits. "This seems too good to be true," I admitted when she finished. "What's the catch?" Amara laughed, a genuine sound that eased some of my tension. "The catch, as you put it, is that we expect excellence. Our scholarship recipients maintain rigorous academic standards and contribute meaningful work to our healthcare initiatives. It's not an easy path." "I'm not afraid of hard work," I said simply. "No," she agreed, studying me with appraising eyes. "I don't believe you are." She closed the folder decisively. "Would you like a tour of the facilities before we discuss next steps?" The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions and information. I met current scholarship recipients, nursing and medical students who worked part-time while completing their education. I toured the laboratories where healthcare technology was being developed and tested. I saw the educational spaces where staff received ongoing training. Throughout it all, I noticed something unexpected. People seemed genuinely happy to be there. The environment fostered collaboration and innovation without the cutthroat competition I'd expected in such a prestigious company. Our healthcare division operates somewhat differently from the rest of Evans Enterprises, Amara explained as we walked. Daniel established it as a separate entity with its own mission statement and culture. He believes healthcare requires a different approach than technology development. That's unusual for a CEO, isn't it? To recognize that different divisions might need different cultures? Amara gave me an approving look. Very perceptive, and yes, it is unusual. Daniel has always understood that human systems are as important as technological ones. She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. He became particularly invested in healthcare after his wife's illness. Caroline's experience with the medical system, both its strengths and its failures, deeply influenced his vision for this division. The mention of Daniel's late wife brought a rush of complicated emotions, sympathy for his loss, curiosity about the woman he had loved, and something less definable, a strange sense of connection to a man whose life circumstances were so different from my own. "Here we are," Amara said, stopping outside a bright corner office. "I believe Daniel wanted to check in before you left." My pulse quickened as the door opened to reveal Daniel Evans sitting behind a modestly sized desk, his attention focused on the document before him. He looked up as we entered, his serious expression immediately warming. "Maya," he said, rising to his feet, "how was the tour?" "Impressive," I admitted. "Your healthcare division is doing incredible work." "Thanks to Amara's leadership," he replied, nodding respectfully to the director. "I hope she's convinced you to join our team?" Amara smiled. "I've presented the opportunity. The decision is Maya's." "Of course," Daniel agreed. "No pressure, although I hope you'll consider it seriously." An awkward silence fell, with Amara glancing between us with barely concealed interest. "Well," she said finally, "I should get back to my meeting. Maya, it was a pleasure. If you decide to accept our offer, just call the number on this card." She handed me her business card and slipped out, leaving me alone with Daniel. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please sit. How are you feeling about everything you've seen today?" I sank into the chair, gathering my thoughts. "Honestly, overwhelmed. This is a remarkable opportunity, but you're concerned about the circumstances," he finished for me. "That it's being offered because of what happened with Ethan." "Yes," I acknowledged. "I don't want special treatment." Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying me with those perceptive eyes. "Maya, let me be clear about something. Did meeting you the way I did bring you to my attention?" Yes, but would I offer you a position you weren't qualified for, or create a role that doesn't need to be filled? Absolutely not. That would be a disservice to you, to the company, and to the patients who ultimately benefit from our work. The sincerity in his voice was compelling. So if I hadn't pulled Ethan away from that car, then we wouldn't be having this conversation, he admitted candidly. But not because you wouldn't deserve the opportunity, simply because our paths wouldn't have crossed. Life is full of such intersections, Maya, random moments that change everything that follows. The question isn't how we meet, but what we do with the connection once it's formed. His words resonated with an unexpected truth. How many pivotal moments in my life had hinged on chance? My parents happening to drive on that particular road on the night of their accident. My grandmother having just enough savings to help me start college. The flat tire that had made me late to class, the day the nursing program director was giving a special lecture leading to our conversation and her mentorship. I need to think about it, I said finally. Of course, Daniel replied. Take all the time you need. He hesitated, then added, this decision is separate from anything else. The unspoken hung in the air between us, the undeniable attraction, the connection that seemed to transcend our brief acquaintance. Is it really, though? I challenged gently. Can they truly be separate? A smile touched his lips, appreciative rather than amused. You don't shy away from difficult questions, do you? Not when they matter, I replied. He nodded, acknowledging the point. In an ideal world, yes, they would be entirely separate. In reality, he sighed, I won't pretend there aren't complications, but I can promise you this. Whatever you decide about the position, it won't affect how I feel about you, personally. And if you accept the job, your performance will be evaluated on its own merits, not on any personal relationship that might develop between us. It was as fair an answer as I could hope for, and more honest than most would have given. Thank you for that, I said quietly. Daniel glanced at his watch. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, but before you go, are you still planning to come to Ethan's soccer game on Saturday? I said I would, I reminded him with a small smile. I keep my promises. I'm glad. He rose, extending his hand. It means a lot to him and to me. I stood as well, taking his offered hand. The simple contact sent a current of awareness through me, and from the slight widening of his eyes, I knew he felt it too. For a moment, we remained like that, connected by more than just our clasped hands. Then reality reasserted itself. I withdrew my hand, he stepped back, and the professional distance between us returned. I'll see you Saturday, I said, moving toward the door. Maya, he called softly as I reached for the handle. I turned back, finding his expression more vulnerable than I'd seen it yet. Whatever you decide about the job, I'm glad we met. Even under those circumstances, I nodded, unable to deny the truth of his words. So am I. As I left the Evans Enterprises building and stepped back into the harsh Arizona sunlight, I felt as though I stood at a crossroads. Behind me lay the familiar struggles of my current life. The endless double shifts, the constant financial anxiety, the slow progress toward my dreams. Ahead lay an uncertain path that promised both opportunity and complication. The choice seemed obvious from a practical standpoint. The scholarship program would transform my educational journey, providing financial stability and professional connections I could only dream of otherwise. Yet I hesitated, wondering if I was ready for how it might transform me as well. And hovering over it all was the question of Daniel Evans himself, the unexpected connection between us, and what accepting his offer might mean for both our lives. Saturday. Morning dawned clear and bright, the Arizona sky an impossible shade of blue. I arrived at Parkside Field 20 minutes early, partly from anxiety about finding the right location, and partly because I couldn't bear Abuela's knowing looks any longer. She hadn't stopped smiling since I'd told her about the scholarship program, convinced that my life was about to change dramatically, and not just professionally. "He's a good man, this Daniel," she'd declared over breakfast, though she'd never met him. "A father who raises his son alone, who builds a company that helps people. These are signs of good character." "Abuela, it's not like that," I'd protested, though my warming cheeks betrayed me. "This is about a job opportunity, not anything else." She just smiled, the expression crinkling the well-worn lines around her eyes. "If you say so, mija." Now, as I made my way across the expansive sports complex, I tried to focus on the practical aspects of the day. I was here to watch Ethan play soccer because I'd promised him I would. Nothing more complicated than keeping a promise to a child who'd been through a traumatic experience. The youth soccer fields were easy to find, already bustling with activity despite the early hour. Teams of children in colorful uniforms warmed up under the watchful eyes of coaches and parents. I scanned the scene, looking for Ethan's team, Maya. The excited shout drew my attention to a small figure running toward me, his cleats kicking up tufts of grass. Ethan's face was alight with genuine joy, as if my presence was the best surprise he could imagine. "You came!" he exclaimed, skidding to a stop in front of me. His blue and white uniform bore the number 7, just as he'd said. I promised, didn't I? I smiled, touched by his enthusiasm. "Are you ready for your game?" "Yep, we're playing the Tigers, and they're really good. But coach says if we pass more, we can beat them." He bounced on his toes, vibrating with pre-game energy. "Dad's over there with the other parents. He saved you a seat." I followed his pointing finger to the sidelines, where rows of portable chairs were arranged. Daniel stood as we approached. His casual weekend attire, jeans and a simple blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up, somehow making him even more handsome than his business suits. "Maya," he greeted me, his smile warm. "I'm glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, suddenly aware of curious glances from nearby parents. No doubt they were wondering who I was and why Daniel Evans's son had raced across the field to greet me. "Ethan, back to warm-up," a coach called, waving the boy over. "Gotta go," Ethan said, already turning. "Watch me, okay? I'm playing forward today." "I'll be watching," I promised as he sprinted back to his team. Daniel gestured to an empty chair beside his own. "I hope you don't mind, but I brought an extra seat. The games can last a while." "Thank you," I said, settling into the surprisingly comfortable folding chair. I've never actually been to a kid's soccer game before. "No younger siblings?" he asked, sitting beside me. I shook my head. "Only child." "You?" "Same," he replied. "Though I always wanted a brother or sister. It's partly why I had hoped for a bigger family myself." A shadow crossed his face briefly. Life had other plans. Before I could respond to this glimpse of vulnerability, a tall, blonde woman approached. Her designer sunglasses and immaculate athleisure wear, marking her as someone accustomed to luxury. "Daniel, darling," she drawled, her voice carrying a hint of southern charm. "I thought that was you. It's been ages since you've attended one of these games." His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Hello, Vanessa. I try to make it to all of Ethan's games, actually." "Of course you do," she replied with a dismissive wave. Her gaze shifted to me, assessing and coolly curious. "And who is this?" Daniel straightened slightly. "Vanessa Harrington. This is Maya Diaz." "Maya, Vanessa is Bryce's mother. Bryce is on Ethan's team." I extended my hand, which Vanessa took with manicured fingers. "Nice to meet you." "Likewise," she murmured, though her tone suggested otherwise. "And how do you two know each other?" The question hung in the air, laden with implication. I glanced at Daniel, uncertain how to explain our unusual connection. "Maya and I met recently," he said smoothly. she's joining Evans Enterprises as part of our healthcare scholarship program. It wasn't a lie, though I hadn't officially accepted the position yet. Still, I noticed he didn't mention Ethan's near accident or explain why his employee would be attending his son's soccer game. "How interesting," Vanessa replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Well, I should find my seat. The PTA meeting is on Wednesday, Daniel. We've missed your input lately." With a final assessing glance at me, she moved away to join a group of equally polished-looking women. "Sorry about that," Daniel said once she was out of earshot. "Vanessa is persistent. I got the impression she's interested in more than your PTA input," I observed, surprising myself with the bold comment. Daniel's laugh was genuine and refreshing. "You're perceptive. She's been trying to secure a dinner date for months now." He shook his head slightly. "Not my type. And what is your type?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His eyes met mine, their expression suddenly intense. "I'm beginning to figure that out." The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility until the referee's whistle shattered it. The game was beginning. For the next hour, I was caught up in the surprising excitement of youth soccer. Ethan played with determined focus, his small face set in concentration as he navigated the field. When he scored a goal in the second quarter, his face lit up with such pride as he searched the sidelines for his father's approval that my heart constricted. "He's really good," I commented during halftime as Ethan gulped water with his teammates. "He loves it," Daniel replied, obvious pride in his voice. "It's been good for him having this outlet. After Caroline died, he withdrew from almost everything. Getting him back into soccer was a turning point." I nodded, understanding the healing, power of routine and physical activity after loss. "My grandmother got me taking long walks with her after my parents died. I hated it at first, but eventually those walks became when I could finally talk about them without falling apart." Daniel's expression softened with recognition. "It's the strangest things that help, isn't it? Not the therapy sessions or the support groups everyone recommends, but the small, ordinary moments when life feels almost normal again." "Exactly," I agreed quietly, moved by how perfectly he'd articulated something I'd never been able to put into words. The second half of the game was more intense than the first, with both teams scoring additional goals. Ethan's team ultimately won by a single point, sending the children into celebrations of jumping, hugging, and triumphant yelling. "Did you see my goal?" Ethan demanded as he raced over after the game, his face flushed with exertion and joy. "Did you see how I kicked it right past their defender?" "I did," I assured him, charmed by his excitement. "It was an amazing shot." "Dad, can we get ice cream to celebrate, please? And can Maya come too?" Daniel raised an eyebrow in my direction, silently asking if I was willing to extend our time together. I found myself nodding before I'd fully considered the implications. "Ice cream sounds great," I said, earning a beaming smile from Ethan. "Awesome! I'm gonna tell Coach we're leaving." He dashed off again, his energy seemingly inexhaustible. As we packed up the folding chairs, I became aware of Vanessa watching us from a few yards away, her expression calculating. When she caught my eye, she offered a tight smile before deliberately approaching Daniel again. "Daniel, a few of us are having a little get-together next Friday, just some team parents and kids for a barbecue. You and Ethan should come." Her gaze slid to me briefly. "You're welcome to bring a guest, of course." The invitation was clearly extended to include me only as an afterthought, a social necessity rather than a genuine welcome. "Thank you, Vanessa, but we already have plans for next Friday," Daniel replied, his tone remaining pleasant but firm. "Another time, perhaps." She pressed her lips together momentarily before recovering her smile. "Of course." Rain check then. With a final assessing look at me, she sauntered away. "We don't have plans next Friday, do we?" I asked quietly as we walked toward the parking lot, Ethan running ahead. Daniel's smile was slightly mischievous. "We do now, if you're free. A work emergency, I think." I laughed despite myself. "Isn't that dishonest?" "Diplomatic," he corrected. "Vanessa's gatherings are thinly veiled opportunities for her to parade eligible women in front of the divorced fathers. I learned my lesson after the first one. The casual mention of other women made me unexpectedly uncomfortable. Of course, someone like Daniel would have options. Women from his social circle, professionals who moved in the same elite worlds, women who wouldn't feel out of place at charity galas or corporate functions. There's an excellent ice cream place just around the corner," Daniel said as we reached his car. A different one from the town car he'd used the other night. This one a sleek but not ostentatious SUV. "We can walk there if you'd prefer." "Walking sounds good," I agreed, grateful for the distraction from my thoughts. Ethan skipped ahead of us on the short walk to the ice cream parlor, occasionally circling back to share another detail about the game or point out something that caught his attention. His natural exuberance was contagious, making it impossible to maintain any sense of awkwardness. The ice cream shop was busy with weekend customers, families and couples enjoying the traditional weekend treat. As we joined the line, I noticed a familiar face behind the counter, Zoe, one of my classmates from the nursing program. "Maya," she called, waving enthusiastically. "I didn't know you came here." "First time, actually," I replied, suddenly aware of how my presence with Daniel and Ethan might appear to someone who knew me. Celebrating a soccer victory. Zoe's gaze shifted to my companions, her eyes widening slightly as she recognized Daniel. She was too professional to comment, but her raised eyebrows spoke volumes. When we reached the front of the line, Ethan ordered a double scoop of cookies and cream with sprinkles, while Daniel chose classic vanilla. I opted for strawberry, reaching for my wallet as Daniel was distracted by Ethan's request for an additional topping. "It's on the house," Zoe whispered, waving away my money. "Friend discount." "Zoe, I can't," I began. "Sure you can," she insisted quietly. "You've covered my coffee enough times before exams. Consider it payback." Before I could protest further, she moved on to the next customer, leaving me holding my free ice cream and feeling strangely conflicted. It was a kind gesture, but somehow it highlighted the disparity between my world and Daniel's. He wouldn't think twice about paying for ice cream, while my classmate and I traded small favors to help each other through tight financial times. We found a table outside where Ethan regaled us with stories about school and soccer between enthusiastic bites of his rapidly melting treat. I watched the easy interaction between father and son, the genuine attention Daniel paid to Ethan's seemingly random topics, the gentle corrections when needed. "Ms. Myers says frogs can breathe through their skin," Ethan announced. "Is that true, Maya, since you're going to be a nurse and know about bodies and stuff?" "It is true," I confirmed, smiling at his curiosity. "They can absorb oxygen directly through their skin when they're underwater." "Whoa," Ethan breathed, clearly impressed. "That's so cool. Could people ever do that?" "I'm afraid not," I laughed. "Our skin is too thick and doesn't have the right kind of blood vessels for that. Bummer." He considered this disappointment briefly before brightening. "But we can hold our breath for a long time if we practice. Jimmy Walker in my class can hold his breath for 2 whole minutes." "Very impressive," Daniel commented, catching my eye with an amused smile. "Though perhaps not something to try with." A mouthful of ice cream. As we finished our treats, my phone buzzed with a text from Abuela. Reminder, work at 3. Don't be late or Rita will complain again. Reality crashed back. Between the soccer game and this unexpectedly pleasant outing, I'd almost forgotten about my shift at the diner. Rita had kept me on the schedule for Saturday afternoon, one of the few shifts she hadn't cut. "I need to go," I said reluctantly, showing Daniel the message. "I have work in an hour." "At the diner?" Ethan asked, disappointment evident in his A voice. But we were going to show you my rock collection when we got home. Another time, buddy, Daniel said gently. Maya has responsibilities, just like how you have to go to school even when you'd rather be playing soccer. Ethan sighed dramatically. Okay, but you promised to come see my rock sometime. I have a real piece of meteorite that Grandpa gave me. That sounds amazing, I told him sincerely. I'd love to see it sometime. Daniel stood. Let me drive you to work. It's the least I can do after you spent your morning cheering on Ethan. That's not necessary, I began. Please, he said quietly. It would make me feel better knowing you got there safely and on time. I hesitated, torn between my instinct for independence and the practical reality that a ride would indeed ensure I arrived on time. All right, thank you. The drive to Rosie's diner was comfortable, with Ethan chattering from the back seat about his rock collection and an upcoming science project. As we pulled into the parking lot, I was acutely aware of how different this entrance would be from my typical arrival via city bus or on foot. Thank you for coming today, Daniel said as he parked. It meant a lot to Ethan. I had a good time, I admitted. He's a wonderful kid. Daniel's expression softened. He likes you. That doesn't happen often, especially since... He didn't need to finish the thought. Since his mother died was implied. I like him too, I said simply. Have you thought more about the position at Evans Enterprises? He asked, changing the subject. I nodded. I have. And I think I'd like to accept if the offer still stands. Relief and pleasure washed across his face. It absolutely does. Amara will be thrilled. He hesitated, then added, and so am I, though. I want to be clear that this is about your qualifications, not my personal feelings. I understand, I assured him, and I appreciate that. Ethan leaned forward between the seats. Does that mean you'll be working with my dad? Will I see you more often? The innocent question highlighted the complexity of the situation. The healthcare division is separate from your dad's main office, I explained carefully. But maybe we'll run into each other sometimes. This answer seemed to satisfy him. Cool, maybe you can come to more of my soccer games. Daniel caught my eye over his son's head, his expression apologetic but also questioning. It was clear that, regardless of professional boundaries, our lives had already begun to intertwine in ways that went beyond a typical employer-employee relationship. I should go, I said, glancing at the time. Thank you again for the ride. Maya, Daniel said, as I opened the car door. About next Friday, I wasn't entirely joking. If you're free, Ethan and I usually have pizza and movie night. Nothing fancy, just if you'd like to join us. The invitation hung in the air between us. Not a date exactly, but definitely more than a casual social gathering. Including Ethan made it both safer and more significant somehow. I'd like that, I heard myself say. Text me the details. His smile was worth any complication this budding relationship might bring. I will. As I walked into Rosie's diner, trading the comfort of Daniel's air-conditioned car for the greasy heat of the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed some invisible threshold. The contrast between the morning I'd just spent and the afternoon ahead was stark, a physical representation of the two worlds I now straddled. Rita glanced up from the register as I entered, her expression sour. You're cutting it close, Maya. I'm 5 minutes early, I pointed out, checking the clock above the grill. She sniffed disapprovingly. Well, Section 3 is already filling up. That convention is in town and we're short-staffed. I nodded, heading to the back to stow my purse and don my apron. As I tied it around my waist, I caught my reflection in the small, spotty mirror on the wall. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, standing a little straighter, eyes a little brighter, despite the familiar surroundings. For the first time, I could see a future beyond these walls, beyond endless shifts and meager tips. A future I hadn't dared imagine before a chance encounter in a parking lot changed everything. My first day at Evans Enterprises arrived with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I'd spent the weekend studying the materials Amara had provided, familiarizing myself with the company's healthcare initiatives and scholarship program requirements. Abuela had ironed my most professional outfit again, the same cream blouse and black pants I'd worn for the interview, and packed me a lunch in our nicest container. You don't want to spend your first day's salary on expensive downtown food, she'd advised sagely. Now, as I rode the elevator to the 12th floor, I tried to steady my nerves. This wasn't just a new job. It was an entirely new world, with different expectations and unwritten rules I had yet to learn. My final shift at Rosie's diner had been yesterday, a bittersweet farewell to the place that had sustained me financially for years, despite its challenges. Rita had been predictably cold when I'd given my notice, but a few of the regular customers had left generous tips and kind notes wishing me well. Maya, right on time. Amara greeted me as I stepped off the elevator, her saffron suit replaced. Today, by a sleek grey dress that somehow managed to look both professional and creative. Ready for your first day? As ready as I'll ever be, I replied honestly. She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Perfect answer, come. Let me introduce you to your mentor and the rest of the team. The healthcare division hummed with purposeful activity as Amara led me through the open workspace. People glanced up and smiled as we passed, their curiosity friendly rather than judgmental. We stopped at a glass-enclosed office where a woman about my age was organizing files on a tablet. Maya, this is Layla Chen, one of our senior scholarship recipients. She's completing her final year of nursing school while working here part-time. Amara gestured between us. Layla will be your mentor for the first few weeks, showing you the ropes and answering any questions. Layla stood and extended her hand with a welcoming smile. She wore simple black pants and a blue blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Professional but not intimidating. Great to meet you, Maya. I've heard good things. The phrasing made me wonder what exactly she'd heard and from whom. Had Daniel spoken about me to others in the company? The thought made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Maya will be assisting with the patient data analysis project, Amara explained to Layla. I've assigned her to your team since you've been handling the pediatric metrics. Perfect timing, Layla replied. We just got the new data set from Phoenix Children's yesterday. I could definitely use another pair of eyes on it. Amara nodded, satisfied. I'll leave you to get settled then. We have a division meeting at 11, so you'll meet everyone else then. My door is always open if you need anything. With a final, encouraging smile, she headed back toward her office. Layla gestured for me to take the chair across from her desk. So, first things first, administrative stuff. She handed me a company badge with my photo already printed on it, along with a sleek tablet. This is your work device. It's loaded with all the software you'll need, secured with biometric access, and connected to our internal network. I took it carefully, momentarily overwhelmed by how official everything felt. Thank you. No problem. Layla's expression softened. It's intimidating at first, I know. I felt completely out of my depth when I started 2 years ago. But you'll catch on quick. Everyone does, or they wouldn't have been selected for the program. Her kindness eased some of my tension. How many scholarship recipients are there currently? 8 active right now, in various healthcare fields. Nursing, public health, healthcare administration, medical school. She began walking me through the division's organization, explaining reporting structures and project teams. We're divided based on initiatives rather than strict hierarchies. It encourages collaboration across disciplines. As she showed me around, introducing me to colleagues and explaining workflows, I began to understand how the division operated. It wasn't just corporate philanthropy. Evans Enterprises was actively developing technologies and systems to improve healthcare delivery, particularly for underserved populations. The scholarship program isn't charity, Layla explained, as we settled at adjacent workstations. It's strategic investment in future healthcare leaders who understand both clinical and technological needs. That's why the work component is so important. You're not just getting educational support, you're contributing to real solutions. This framing helped ease my lingering concerns about accepting what had initially felt like Daniel's generosity. If my work here was genuinely valuable to the company, then the arrangement was mutually beneficial rather than one-sided. Now, let me show you the pediatric data project, Layla continued, bringing up a complex dashboard on her screen. We're analyzing outcomes from a new electronic health record system implemented at Phoenix Children's last year. The goal is to identify whether it's improving care coordination for kids with chronic conditions. For the next hour, she walked me through the project, explaining data sources, analytical approaches, and expected outcomes. The work was fascinating. Exactly the kind of systemic improvement that had drawn me to healthcare in the first place. By the time we headed to the division meeting, I felt a growing excitement about the meaningful work I'd be part of. The meeting itself was unlike any I'd experienced before. Held in a large conference room with glass walls overlooking the city, it brought together about 30 people from different teams. Amara facilitated with a mixture of formality and warmth, moving efficiently through updates while encouraging questions and discussion. Before we wrap up, she said toward the end, I'd like to introduce our newest scholarship recipient, Maya Diaz, who's joining the pediatric outcomes team. She gestured for me to stand. Maya is pursuing her nursing degree with a focus on pediatrics. We're delighted to have her with us. Murmurs of welcome rippled through the room as I smiled nervously. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to learning from everyone. As I sat down, I noticed a tall man in the back of the room who hadn't been there earlier, Daniel. He'd slipped in quietly during the meeting, standing unobtrusively against the wall. Our eyes met briefly, and he offered a small, encouraging nod before returning his attention to Amara. My immediate supervisor, Dr. Lin, approached as the meeting dispersed. Welcome aboard, Maya. Good first impression in there. Confident but humble. That plays well in this division. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the specific feedback. I'm just trying not to seem as overwhelmed as I feel, he chuckled. You're going to do fine. Layla's one of our stars. You're in good hands with her. He glanced toward the back of the room where Daniel was now engaged in conversation with Amara, and it seems you've already made a positive impression on the boss. The comment, though delivered lightly, carried weight. I forced a casual smile. Mr. Evans has been very supportive of the scholarship program. Dr. Lin nodded, seeming to accept this explanation. He's always been particularly invested in our division, ever since. He trailed off, perhaps remembering it wasn't his place to discuss Daniel's personal history with a new employee. As people filtered out of the conference room, Daniel made his way over to us. Dr. Lin, good to see you. How's the cardiovascular project progressing? On schedule, Mr. Evans. The preliminary results are promising. We should have the full analysis by end of quarter. Excellent. Daniel turned to me, his manner professionally cordial. Ms. Diaz, welcome to Evans Enterprises. I trust your first morning has been productive. The formality felt strange after our previous interactions, but I recognize the necessity of it in this setting. Yes, sir. Everyone has been very helpful. Glad to hear it. He nodded to Dr. Lin. I won't keep you from your work. I just wanted to welcome our newest team member personally. As he walked away, Dr. Lin raised an eyebrow slightly but made no comment. Let's get back to the team. We have a project review at 2. Throughout the afternoon, I immersed myself in learning systems and protocols, trying to absorb as much as possible. Layla was a patient teacher, answering my questions and offering context for the work we were doing. By the end of the day, my head was spinning with new information, but I felt a sense of accomplishment that had been rare in my previous job. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone buzzed with a text message. How was your first day? It was from Daniel. I hesitated, unsure about the boundaries of our communication now that I was officially his employee. After a moment's deliberation, I typed a response, overwhelming but exciting. Everyone's been very welcoming. His reply came quickly. Glad to hear it. Still on for Friday? Rita, pizza and movies with him and Ethan. In the intensity of starting the new job, I'd almost forgotten about the invitation. Yes, looking forward to it, I responded, then added, is it appropriate for us to text like this? Now that I'm working for you, 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared before his message came through. Technically, you work in Amara's division, not directly for me, but you raise a valid concern. Perhaps we should discuss this in person. Coffee tomorrow morning before work, the cafe on the ground floor, 8 a.m.? The suggestion was reasonable. A conversation about boundaries was indeed necessary. But meeting at the company cafe felt risky. What if people saw us and jumped to conclusions? Could we make it somewhere else, I suggested. Maybe not in the building. His response was immediate. Good thinking. Little Owl Cafe, 2 blocks east, same time. Perfect, I replied, relieved at his understanding. As I rode the bus home, watching the gleaming downtown buildings give way to more modest neighborhoods, I contemplated the strange duality of my current situation. I was thrilled with the professional opportunity before me, meaningful work that aligned with my career goals, generous compensation, and valuable experience. Yet I couldn't deny that my relationship with Daniel complicated matters. Was it even a relationship? We'd shared meals, conversations, a connection that felt significant but remained undefined. He was still my boss, at least in the corporate hierarchy, regardless of departmental divisions. And he had a child to consider, a child who already seemed attached to me after just a few brief interactions. How was it? Abuela called as I entered our apartment. She sat at the kitchen table, sorting coupons with methodical precision, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Amazing, I admitted, dropping my bag and slipping off my shoes. The work they're doing is incredible, Abuela. They're developing systems to help doctors and nurses coordinate care for children with complex medical needs, and I get to be part of it. Her face softened with pride. I knew you would find your place, Mija. You were always meant for important work. It's just an entry-level position, I said, downplaying her praise even as it warmed me. All great journeys begin with a single step, she replied, tapping a finger on the table emphatically. This is your step, I smiled, moving to the refrigerator to start dinner preparations. By the way, I might be home late on Friday. I've been invited to a gathering. A gathering? Her tone was skeptical. With Mr. Evans, perhaps? I sighed, knowing I couldn't hide anything from her perceptive gaze. It's just pizza and movies with him and his son. Nothing fancy. The sound conveyed volumes of unspoken opinion. And this is separate from work? That's what we're trying to figure out, I admitted, turning to face her. We're meeting tomorrow to discuss boundaries. Abuela sat down, her coupon scissors giving me her full attention. Maya, you are a smart girl. You know the complications of mixing work and personal feelings. But sometimes the heart follows its own path, regardless of what is convenient. I barely know him, I protested. And yet you light up when you speak of him, she observed gently. Be careful, Misha. Not because he isn't worthy, but because these situations require delicate balance. Your career is important. I know, I sighed, resuming my dinner preparations. That's exactly what I'm worried about. What if people think I only got this position because of whatever this is between us? Then you must work twice as hard to prove your worth, she replied simply, and be honest, with him, with yourself, with others when necessary. Her advice, as always, cut through my confusion with straightforward wisdom. The next morning, I arrived at Little Owl Cafe 15 minutes early, my nerves making it impossible to wait any longer. The small establishment was busy with the pre-work crowd, professionals grabbing coffee and pastries before heading to their offices. I found a table in the corner, partially screened by a leafy plant, and ordered a simple coffee. Daniel arrived precisely at 8, scanning the cafe before spotting me. He wore a grey suit today, impeccably tailored but not flashy, his only accessory a simple watch. Several women glanced appreciatively as he made his way to my table, and I felt an unexpected flicker of something, not quite jealousy, but awareness of how others saw him. "Good morning," he greeted me, setting down his briefcase. "Have you ordered?" "Just coffee," I replied, gesturing to my mug. "They have good pastries here, though." He signaled a server and ordered coffee and 2 chocolate croissants. "One for each of us, if you're hungry." The gesture was thoughtful, but highlighted another aspect of our imbalanced dynamic. He ordered without asking the price, while I had deliberately chosen the least expensive option on the menu. About yesterday, he began once the server had departed. "I want to apologize if my presence at the division meeting made you uncomfortable. I tried to attend when my schedule allows, but I should have warned you." "It's fine," I assured him. "You're the CEO. You can attend any meeting you want." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "True, but I'm aware that my presence changes the dynamic, especially for someone in your situation." "My situation?" He leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "Maya, I think we need to be direct about this. There's an attraction between us that goes beyond professional admiration. I felt it the moment we met, inappropriate as the circumstances were. But now, you're working for my company, and that creates complications." The frankness of his assessment was both startling and refreshing. "Yes," I agreed quietly, "it does." Our coffee and croissants arrived, giving us both a moment to collect our thoughts. Daniel took a sip before continuing. "I've been thinking about the best way to handle this. The most conservative approach would be to maintain strictly professional contact until your scholarship program concludes. No personal interactions, no social engagements, nothing that could be misconstrued." My heart sank at this clinical solution, though I understood the logic behind it. "That would be safest," I acknowledged. "It would," he agreed. "But I don't think it's what either of us wants." His eyes met mine, searching. "Is it?" I shook my head slowly. "No, but I'm concerned about how it might affect my position. I don't want special treatment, and I don't want others thinking I received special treatment." "That's a valid concern." He broke off a piece of his croissant, considering. "What if we establish some ground rules? Complete separation of professional and personal interactions. At work, I'm Mr. Evans, CEO, nothing more. Outside of work, we can explore whatever this is between us, but with discretion." "Discretion," I repeated, testing the word. "You mean secrecy?" He frowned slightly. "Not exactly. I'm not suggesting we sneak around or lie, just privacy, until we figure out what this is. If it turns into something significant, then we'll deal with the professional implications appropriately." It was a pragmatic approach, one that acknowledged the reality of our situation while allowing space for possibility. "And Ethan?" I asked, thinking of the complication his son represented. A shadow crossed Daniel's face. "Ethan is already attached to you." I won't pretend that doesn't concern me. He's been through so much loss already. I would never want to hurt him, I said softly. I know. His expression softened. That's part of why I'm drawn to you, Maya. Your compassion is genuine. He hesitated, then added, but I think we should be careful about how much time you spend with him until we're more certain about where this is heading. The caution was sensible, even as it pained me to think of distancing myself from Ethan's eager friendship. So maybe pizza and movies isn't the best idea right now? Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. He's been talking about it non-stop. Canceling now would require an explanation I'm not prepared to give him. Then we go ahead with it, I decided. But maybe we keep future gatherings more public for a while. Less intimate. He nodded slowly. That's reasonable. And at work? Complete professionalism, I agreed. No special treatment, no private meetings without clear business purposes, no personal communications during work hours. Agreed. He extended his hand, formally, as if we were sealing a business deal. Shall we shake on it? I took his offered hand, trying to ignore the warmth that spread from our connected palms. This wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a thoughtful attempt to navigate a complex situation with integrity. As we finished our coffee and prepared to head to our respective offices, separately by mutual agreement, Daniel paused. One more thing, Maya. Whatever happens between us personally, your position at Evans Enterprises is secure based on your own merit. I've instructed HR and Amara to document your hiring process thoroughly, including your qualifications and the legitimate business need for your role. If questions ever arise, there's a clear record that your appointment was justified professionally. The gesture touched me deeply. He had anticipated my concern and taken concrete steps to address it, protecting not just the company, but my professional dignity. Thank you, I said sincerely. That means a lot to me. He nodded once, his expression serious. Your career matters, Maya. I would never want to complicate that, no matter how much I enjoy your company. As I watched him walk away, navigating the morning crowd with unconscious authority, I felt both relief and trepidation. We had established boundaries, yes, but in doing so, we had also acknowledged that there was something to contain, something powerful enough to require rules and caution. I gathered my own things and headed toward Evans Enterprises, wondering if the lines we'd just drawn would hold, or if they would prove as fragile as they already felt. Weeks passed in a blur of new routines and careful boundaries. By day, I immersed myself in the healthcare division, analyzing pediatric care data and learning the intricate systems that supported Evans Enterprises' medical initiatives. The work was challenging, but deeply satisfying, connecting directly to the reasons I'd pursued nursing in the first place, making healthcare more accessible and effective for those who needed it most. Layla proved to be not just a mentor, but a friend, guiding me through corporate protocols while sharing insights she'd gained during her time in the scholarship program. We often worked through lunch together, discussing project challenges and nursing school experiences over homemade sandwiches in the staff kitchen. You're catching on faster than most newcomers, she remarked one afternoon as we reviewed a particularly complex dataset. Dr. Lin mentioned you're outpacing expectations. Really? The praise both pleased and surprised me. I still feel like I'm stumbling through half the time, Layla laughed, closing the file we'd been examining. Trust me, everyone feels that way at first. The difference is you don't let it stop you from diving in. She hesitated, then added casually, a few people were skeptical when you first started, you know. My stomach tightened. Skeptical? Office gossip travels fast, she said with an apologetic shrug. Someone saw you and the boss having coffee that first week. Assumptions were made, the very thing I'd feared. What kind of assumptions? The usual. Layla's tone was matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. That you might have connections rather than qualifications. But honestly, Maya, you've put those whispers to rest with your work. Even Caroline's old guard has noticed your contributions. Caroline's old guard, I repeated, confused. Layla looked momentarily uncomfortable. Sorry, internal politics. Mrs. Evans, Daniel's wife, she was instrumental in establishing the healthcare division. Some of the senior staff were personally recruited by her. They tend to be protective of her legacy. I absorbed this new information, understanding better why some colleagues had seemed reserved with me. It wasn't just potential gossip about my relationship with Daniel. It was also loyalty to his late wife's vision. I had no idea Caroline was so involved with the company, I said carefully. Oh yes, she was brilliant. A healthcare administrator with degrees from Johns Hopkins and Harvard. The patient-centered approach of this entire division was her brainchild. Layla gathered her files, apparently unaware of how her casual history lesson was affecting me. Anyway, my point is that you're earning respect on your own merits. That's not easy to do here. As she walked away, I sat motionless, processing what I'd learned. Caroline Evans hadn't just been Daniel's wife and Ethan's mother. She'd been a healthcare visionary, highly educated and professionally accomplished. The gap between her world and mine suddenly seemed vast and unbridgeable. That evening, as I packed up to leave, Dr. Lin approached my workstation. Maya, do you have a moment? Of course, I replied, setting down my bag. I'd like you to take point on the presentation for the Phoenix Children's Hospital Board next week, he said without preamble. You've done excellent work on the data analysis, and you understand the clinical implications better than most of the tech team. The assignment was significant, a high-profile opportunity to represent Evans Enterprises to one of its major healthcare partners. Are you sure? I've only been here a few weeks, which means you'll bring fresh perspective, he countered, and you have a nursing background, which gives you credibility with the clinical staff. Pride mingled with apprehension. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd hoped for when joining the company, a chance to contribute meaningfully to projects that mattered. Yet I couldn't help wondering if my connection to Daniel had influenced the decision, despite our careful professional distance. Thank you for the opportunity, I said finally. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Dr. Lin replied confidently. The team will support you with the technical details, but I want you to drive the narrative. These initiatives succeed or fail based on clinical adoption, not just technological merit. As I rode the bus home, my mind raced with mixed emotions. The presentation was a vote of confidence in my abilities, a chance to prove myself to the division. Yet it also raised the stakes of my precarious balancing act. If I succeeded, would people attribute it to my relationship with Daniel? If I failed, would it reflect poorly on his judgment in bringing me into the company? I was still mulling these questions when my phone buzzed with a text message from Daniel. How about lunch tomorrow? Off-site, of course. There's something I'd like to discuss. We'd maintained our agreement about separation of work and personal interactions, limiting our contact to occasional dinners or weekend outings with Ethan. Text messages during work hours were rare, used only for logistical purposes. Everything okay? I responded, concerned by the unusual request. Everything's fine, just want your perspective on something. 1 p.m. at Castello's? Castello's was a small Italian restaurant several blocks from Evans Enterprises, far enough to avoid colleagues, but close enough for a lunch break. See you there, I replied. When I arrived the following day, Daniel was already seated at a corner table, studying his tablet with focused intensity. He wore a navy suit today, his tie loosened slightly in a rare display of informality. He looked up as I approached, his serious expression warming. Thank you for coming, he said as I took the seat across from him. I know we agreed to minimize work-hour meetings. It's fine, I assured him, curious about what could be important enough to break our self-imposed rules. What's on your mind? Set his tablet aside, folding his hands on the table. I heard about your assignment for the Phoenix Children's presentation. My guard immediately rose. Dr. Lin asked me yesterday. I was going to mention it on Friday when we take Ethan to the Science Museum. It's an excellent opportunity, Daniel said quickly. You're well suited for it. But, I prompted, sensing his hesitation. He sighed, running a hand through his hair in that now familiar gesture of frustration. But I'm concerned about potential perceptions. This is a high-profile assignment for someone who's been with the company such a short time. You think people will assume I got it because of our connection, I finished for him. Some might, he acknowledged. Though Dr. Lin made the decision independently, I had no involvement. I studied him, noting the genuine concern in his expression. What would you suggest? That I decline the assignment? No, he said firmly. That would only fuel speculation and deny you a valuable professional opportunity. He hesitated. I'm simply suggesting you be prepared for scrutiny. Some board members know me personally. They might draw conclusions. The reality of our situation settled heavily between us. No matter how carefully we maintain professional boundaries within the company, external perceptions remain beyond our control. I appreciate the warning, I said finally, but I can't shape my career around what people might think or say. The work matters too much. Pride flickered in his eyes. That's exactly the right approach. Focus on the substance. Let the results speak for themselves. He leaned back slightly. I shouldn't have raised this. I trust your judgment. No, I'm glad you did, I assured him. These are complications we have to navigate if we're going to... I trailed off, unsure how to characterize what existed between us. If we're going to see where this leads, he finished quietly. The waiter approached, temporarily suspending our conversation as we ordered lunch. When we were alone again, Daniel shifted to lighter topics. Ethan's latest school project, my classes, a book we'd both recently read. The ease between us was palpable, a connection that transcended our different backgrounds and circumstances. As lunch concluded, he asked casually, "Are we still on for Friday?" Ethan's been talking about the dinosaur exhibit all week. Absolutely, I smiled, warming at the thought of the boys' enthusiasm. Though I should warn you, I know an alarming amount about Triceratops. Dinosaurs were my obsession when I was 9. Daniel laughed, the sound drawing glances from nearby diners. Perfect. Ethan will interrogate you mercilessly. He's currently convinced he'll be a paleontologist. Last month it was astronaut, right? And before that, deep-sea explorer, he confirmed with fond exasperation. The joys of parenting an imaginative child. The easy reference to parenting sparked a flutter of something indefinable in my chest. Not quite anxiety, not quite longing, but a complex emotion that acknowledged the increasingly significant role I was playing in Ethan's life. However carefully, we tried to manage it. Back at the office, I threw myself into preparation for the Phoenix Children's presentation, determined to prove myself on merit alone. Layla and the technical team supported my efforts, offering insights and refining the data visualizations that would illustrate our findings. You've got a natural talent for translating technical information into clinical relevance, Dr. Lin commented during our review session. That's rare and valuable. His praise bolstered my confidence, even as I worked long hours to ensure every detail was perfect. By the time presentation day arrived, I was exhausted but thoroughly prepared, having rehearsed my talking points until they flowed naturally. The Phoenix Children's Hospital boardroom was intimidating, a formal space with portraits of past. Medical directors lining the walls and an enormous mahogany table where board members now sat, their expressions ranging from polite interest to skeptical assessment. Ms. Diaz will present the findings from our first-year implementation study. Dr. Lin introduced me to the assembled group. As you know, Evans Enterprises partnered with Phoenix Children's to develop this integrated care system for children with complex medical needs. Maya brings both technical expertise and nursing background to her analysis. I stepped forward, thanking him for the introduction, and launched into my presentation. Initial nervousness gave way to focused engagement as I walked the board through our findings: the 23% reduction in medication errors, the improved coordination between specialists, the decreased readmission rates for children with chronic conditions. The data clearly demonstrates clinical impact, I concluded, but equally important are the qualitative improvements reported by your nursing staff. They spend less time on documentation and more time with patients. That's the true measure of successful health technology. Questions followed, some technical, others probing potential weaknesses in our methodology. I answered each thoroughly, deferring to the technical team when appropriate, but maintaining ownership of the analysis. "Impressive work, Ms. Diaz," remarked Dr. Watkins, the hospital's chief medical officer, as the session concluded. "You've addressed several concerns our clinical directors raised about the initial implementation. How long have you been with Evans Enterprises?" "Just over a month, sir," I replied honestly. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Remarkable. You present like someone with years of corporate experience." He turned to Dr. Lin. "Your team has done excellent work here. We'd like to expand the implementation to our satellite clinics based on these results." The validation was sweet, made sweeter by the knowledge that it came purely from the quality of our work. As we gathered our materials to leave, Dr. Watkins approached me directly. "Ms. Diaz, your nursing perspective was evident in your presentation. We need more clinicians involved in healthcare technology development. Have you considered pursuing informatics certification?" "I'm focused on completing my BSN first," I explained, "but healthcare informatics definitely interests me for graduate work." "Something to consider," he nodded approvingly. "Evans Enterprises would be wise to support that educational path for you. The intersection of clinical and technical expertise is precisely what these initiatives require." The conversation left me glowing with professional pride as we returned to the office. Dr. Lin congratulated the team, singling out my contribution for specific praise. "The satellite clinic expansion is a significant contract. Well done, everyone." Later that afternoon, as I sat at my workstation completing documentation of the presentation outcomes, an email notification appeared on my screen. From Daniel Evans. Hesitated before opening it, aware of our agreement about workplace communications. The message was brief and formal. "Ms. Diaz, Dr. Watkins from Phoenix Children's contacted me personally to commend your presentation. He specifically noted the clinical perspective you brought to the technical discussion. This represents exactly the kind of impact we hope our scholarship recipients will have. Well done." Daniel Evans, CEO, Evans Enterprises. The formal language maintained our professional boundaries while still conveying his pride in my accomplishment. I smiled, appreciating his thoughtfulness, and composed an equally professional reply. "Mr. Evans, thank you for sharing Dr. Watkins' feedback. The entire team contributed to the successful presentation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to represent Evans Enterprises in this important partnership. Maya Diaz, Healthcare Initiatives Associate." As I pressed send, Layla appeared beside my desk. "Success story travels fast," she remarked with a grin. "The whole division's buzzing about the satellite expansion. Dr. Lin says it's worth at least $2 million in new contracts." "It was a team effort," I demurred, echoing my email. "True, but you were the face of it," she countered. "That matters in corporate politics." She lowered her voice slightly, and for what it's worth, I overheard Caroline's old guard, Dr. Fraser, and Ms. Winters, specifically praising your clinical perspective. That's practically unheard of from them. The validation from these unseen judges people who had worked with Daniel's late wife and upheld her vision, meant more than I could explain to Layla. Not because they were connected to Daniel personally, but because they represented the professional legacy I now contributed to. "Thanks for telling me," I said sincerely. "That means a lot." As I packed up to leave that evening, a sense of accomplishment buoyed my steps. Today, I had proven myself on my own merits. Whatever complications might exist in my personal relationship with Daniel, my professional path was increasingly clear and validated. My phone buzzed as I exited the building. Another text from Daniel. "Heard more details about your triumph today. Wish I could take you to dinner to celebrate properly. Rain check until after the Science Museum tomorrow?" I smiled, typing back, "Rain check accepted. Tonight belongs to flashcards anyway. Pharmacology exam next week." His response came quickly. "Study well. Ethan and I are counting the hours until tomorrow." He's prepared a full dinosaur quiz to test your Triceratops knowledge. The simple exchange warmed me more than an elaborate celebration could have. Daniel understood and respected my priorities, both professional and educational. He saw me as a whole person, not just a romantic interest or an employee. As I boarded the bus home, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few short weeks. I had stepped into a new world professionally, establishing myself through dedication and hard work. The boundaries Daniel and I had established were holding, allowing us to explore our connection while maintaining appropriate separation between personal and professional spheres. Yet challenges remained. The shadow of Caroline Evans, brilliant, educated, the architect of the very division where I now worked, loomed larger now that I understood her role in shaping the company. And despite today's success, I knew that perceptions and politics would continue to complicate my path. For now, though, I allowed myself to savor the victory and look forward to tomorrow's museum outing with Daniel and Ethan. One step at a time, I was building a new life, one that increasingly felt right despite its complications. 3 years later, I stood in the pediatric wing of Phoenix Children's Hospital, not as a visitor or presenter, but as a registered nurse completing my first day of work. My journey from waitress to healthcare professional had been challenging, but every sacrifice had been worth it. The scholarship program had transformed my life, allowing me to complete my nursing degree with honors. Daniel and I had navigated the complexities of our relationship carefully, maintaining professional boundaries until I graduated and found employment outside Evans Enterprises. As I walked toward the exit, a familiar figure waited in the lobby. Daniel, with Ethan beside him, now taller and more confident at 12 years old. "How was your first day, Nurse Diaz?" Daniel asked, his eyes reflecting the same warmth I'd seen that fateful day in the diner parking lot. "Amazing," I replied, taking his hand as Ethan hugged me excitedly. The simple gold band on my finger caught the light, a recent addition after our small, intimate wedding last month. Abuela had cried happy tears as she watched me marry the man whose son I had saved by chance. "Ready to go home?" Daniel asked softly. Home. A word that once meant a cramped apartment and endless struggle now represented so much more. Family, security, and a love that had begun with a split-second decision to help a stranger in need.